The grass is always greener over the septic tank. All right, let's hear it. This is the real story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates in Contra Costa County talk about all things real estate. Hey, Sherry,
Hey, Adam.
how are you doing?
Well, I am going to sound very stuffed up and nasally today during our podcast. I'm just giving you a forewarning. Even
Yeah,
though it's only January 21st, California is bursting into bloom early, and my allergies are paying for it.
yeah. I've had a little of the sniffles myself for that very same reason. So,
It
yeah.
feels bad to complain about, oh, it's warm and our trees are starting to bloom when the rest of the country is, encased in ice. But there you have it.
Or in Southern California, and the whole place is on fire. So,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I'm
We're not
sorry, I'm not
complaining.
really.
Yeah, we're not really complaining about, oh, we have allergies.
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's really going to be a perfect lead-in for today's topic when we eventually get there, because we're going to talk
House.
about landscaping, getting ready for the market in the spring.
Oh, yeah, that is a
Everything's in
good lead
bloom.
in.
Yeah. But before we get there, just any observations about the market early here? This is the third week of January.
Yeah.
Any sense of what's going to shape up in 2025 now that we've got a couple weeks in?
Well, I don't know if I'm willing to talk about all of 2025, but I hear that we're going to have a busy spring market and
Yes.
maybe more inventory than we've had.
Yeah, I mean, we have a surprising number of listings that we're prepping this early in the year.
Yes.
But I get the feeling that we're not unique as I've talked to our colleagues in our office and a few other
Yep.
resources. The
Yep.
stages are starting to stack up.
Yep. Stagers are busy, title companies are busy. We've got six listings we're prepping. I don't remember when we've ever had six listings in January that we're prepping for market. Do
Yeah.
you?
No, I mean, I think that we had 6 or 7 transactions in 1 month in 2020, and that's when I went gray, for the record. But you couldn't tell then because I was wearing a mask, so I was hiding my premature aging. Um,
Yeah, I remember. I think it was more than six. At one point, I think we might have had eight, and I just lost complete control about anything that was going on and had to sit down and do a spreadsheet so that I knew what had been done and what hadn't been done in each one. That was crazy times.
So for the record, when Sherry said spreadsheet, that's like Linus's blanket. She's like, that is her comfort food. She practically stuck her thumb in her mouth and was in the fetal position in the corner, and the spreadsheet brought her back.
Uh-huh, exactly. All of that.
Which is why Sherry and I get along so much because I like organization and she's good at organizing. So we work well together that way.
Uh-huh, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Um, the so our topic today is prepping houses, and partly because we're in the midst of it, we're up to our eyeballs and prepping 6 different listings, and they're all in just they all have different needs. Owner occupied, vacant, former rentals,
yep.
and it's just every house is like its own little puzzle to solve, and what are the things that it needs, and
Yes.
that's interesting and fun and sometimes challenging because as a homeowner sometimes we neglect things that we don't pay attention to, and then but your realtor comes in and said, yeah, that might be a distraction for everybody. It's like, well, it wasn't a distraction for me. I just kept washing my dishes by hand. The dishwasher doesn't work. I don't care. Like,
Uh-huh.
somebody's gonna care. We have to
Uh-huh.
fix that.
Yes. It's funny that we're talking about prepping. I think we're going to talk specifically about prepping yards, right?
Yep.
Exteriors for
Yep.
sale today, because we might have talked about getting things ready inside, which is usually paint and flooring and maybe a few other things, inspections.
Right.
Um, but it's normally what happens in spring market, as you know, and as we tell our clients, is that when everything starts to bloom, the trees get green, the weather warms up a bit, it stops raining, is the perfect time to go on the market. But this year's been a little bit different because I don't think it's rained for a month. And there doesn't seem to be any rain in the forecast. So that might change when houses are coming on the market, right?
Yeah, that'll be our jinx. If we get our houses on the market, it'll start raining. So
Yeah,
everybody get your houses ready. We need the rain.
exactly. And it'll start to pour for a month.
Yeah, but well, like you were saying in the beginning, the hay fever and allergies kicked in because all the plants are like, I know it's only the end of January, but it feels like spring already.
Yeah.
And things, I had a friend who was posting that their daffodils were already in bloom in January. We typically don't see those for a few more weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and
I know
just,
it was in the high 60s. What up in, I heard in Santa Rosa yesterday it was 68 degrees. It's like, it's January, people.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, convince those bulbs to stay in the ground a little bit longer. Have you ever heard about naturalizing bulbs?
no. Do
So we
so.
had a kick that we were doing that a while ago where we buried them in our lawn,
Mhm.
and you don't really need to mow your lawn much in the winter because it doesn't grow that much. And
No.
so the bulbs would grow up in the middle of the lawn, just kind of scattered like they would in a field. So
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
naturalizing like a meadow.
Yeah.
Um, and then um, and then by the time spring comes around, when you need to start mowing, then you mow down the bulbs, the daffodils, or whatever else you have, the naked ladies. Um, but what we discovered
First of
is that
August.
they when you hack them down with your lawnmower, they don't come back every year. And so
No.
it had a nice effect for a couple years, but
Yeah.
um, and then it was just because you naturalized them, you couldn't exactly remember where they were to dig them up to propagate them. So
Found that
it looked
natural.
really nice for a season or two, and then it was like, total waste.
Well, as you know, I'm not a gardener. Although I have excelled at growing parsley this winter, I can't grow anything else. But I do know that for bulbs, once they bloom, you have to let the tops die, right?
Right,
Or they don't divide and come up the next year.
right.
So if you mow them down with your lawnmower, that kind of seems like that wouldn't do the trick.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. So, um,
These are my bulbs.
oh yeah. Are you
It's
gonna
January.
are
They
you gonna
have not,
put them
I
in a
think they were
pot, or
supposed
what are
to
you
go on
doing?
the ground in like November.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Oh
didn't
well.
happen.
Oh well. You'll have to put them
Anyway,
in a closet for a little while, maybe.
or the freezer or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
something. Yeah,
Fake winter.
yeah. Well, so the thing about spring market is it's a good time for people that are tied to a school year to buy and sell because
Yep.
that allows them to get into their new place before the starts. And this year, I think it's starting
Mhm.
on August 1st. I think it's the first day of school in the Walnut Creek School District or
That is
the
still summertime. I'm
or Mount
sorry.
Dial. Yeah, I know. It's like that's you got like what 5 weeks after. I don't know. Anyway,
Sorry
but
to
the other
interrupt.
reason, like you were saying, is that everything is in full bloom. And so landscape and gardening is the one thing that's kind of out of cycle with the rest of the house prep. So typically we talk about prepping the house, as you alluded to, the painting the interior perhaps, or flooring and maybe the repairs. Those are all really easier things to do once somebody moves out of the house
Yep.
and then it's just a few weeks until we get to market. But landscaping is, it takes things a little bit longer, even here in California, to reach their full prime. And so the landscaping discussion, this is really January and February are good times to come up with that plan and execute it so that by the
Hmm.
time you get to April, it's leafing out and growing into a larger size.
Yep.
Do you what are some of the things that we typically see our landscaper recommend in prepping a house?
Well, I'm not sure that our landscaper makes those recommendations because we kind of had to train Lorenzo at one point because he was a traditional landscaper and he knows that if you put a little plant in the ground, 5 months later it's going to turn into a big plant. But we don't have 5 months. Oftentimes we're prepping homes and yards for sale a few weeks, if that, before they actually go on the market. So he was going out and buying little 4-inch plants, knowing they were going to get big. And we were like, no, 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 no. We need a gallon size
Yeah.
plant because we need it to look good in the photos and not look like it's something that we planted just for sale. We want it to look as mature as possible given the constraints of what we're doing. And so even though it was counterproductive to the way a gardener would work, he went out and bought, gallon-sized plants and planted them in, and then they looked great. Who knows what they look like 6 months later when they've taken over the whole house, you know?
Well, I don't think it's so much that they get too big. I think it's the cost, right? A half gallon pot costs a lot less than a gallon pot, and if you're
Yeah,
thinking about owning something for a number of years,
yeah,
you don't care that it's starting out small because
right.
you can get more plants and so I think that's his sensibility is that there's no reason
Yes.
if there's no reason to buy the bigger plot, save the money and buy the smaller plant, let it
Yeah.
develop. I guess I was thinking more about how he does his magic work to green lawns up.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that lawns are, people forget that lawns actually have life cycles and that
Yeah.
they can get very, I'll say woody, but what I mean by that is that their root systems can become really intertwined and impacted and it affects the way water permeates it and the way that each of the little grass plants are able to absorb the water. And so I forget he told me one time, but like how many years a typical lawn can stay looking good without any sort of reseeding or overseeding and aerating and that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
he's a miracle worker in that if a lawn is looking old and tired, either from lack of water or lack of fertilization or kind of the overgrowth maturity of it.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember some of the tricks that you've seen him do?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what he uses, but it's some sort of a fertilizer, and I think he uses a lot of it, right?
Yep.
He kind of over fertilizes it, and then for about 2 weeks, just gives the lawn a lot of water, normally every single day, more than you normally would give it. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, we're ready for photos, and we've got this gorgeous green lawn.
Yeah.
It is
Well,
magic.
when he first it might even be some sort of manure fertilizer. When he first puts it out, you're like, you just threw dirt all over the lawn. That doesn't look and
I haven't actually seen him do it, but
yeah, no, when you first you just buried all the grass that was there. Now it looks less green. But sure enough, the all the nutrients that he's putting down and then the water just flooding those roots and giving them what they need, it helps really green it up and can
mhm.
make a what looks like a half dead lawn look very lush.
It's interesting that we spend all this time and money on getting a yard, a front and a backyard ready for sale, but it can make a huge difference in how much a house is worth. And in the eyes of the buyer, we spend a lot of time in our yards in California. We can probably spend time in our yards 9 or 10 months out of the year, sometimes longer. And I think you and I had we were helping buyers figure out what to offer on a house over on Stratton one year. And there was a comp that was out of whack for everything else. And we couldn't figure out why it sold for so much more than it did. And when we started to really study the pictures, we realized it had this killer yard.
Yeah.
We picked up the phone and called the agent who we know and said, what was up with the yard? And it turned out it was his boyhood home. And he had all these amazing memories of these summers at this house when he was growing up, and the parties and the, kid friends coming over and everything that you do in a yard in the summertime in California. And they really emphasized that when they put the house on the market. And I don't remember how much over it was as far as other comps, but I want to say it was like $150,000. And it was because of the yard. The house was ordinary,
Yeah.
but that's why we do this.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about, yard space, I mean, we were just for a few moments talking about the softscape part of it, right? The plants and the lawn.
Mhm.
We didn't talk about the bark. That's a whole conversation on its own.
But yeah.
Um, but that the both hardscape and amenities and that the house that you're talking about had some really great amenities. I mean, I
Mhm.
think an outdoor kitchen with a gazebo,
A
maybe,
pool, a really pretty
and a
pool.
pool. Maybe it had a waterfall feature
Yep,
to it, and all of those things add to the not only the aesthetics of the backyard, but the usability of it. And I
yep,
like to think about, especially if you have a larger yard, creating different rooms in your outdoor space so
yep,
that it's not just, you know, 100 by 50 grass.
yep,
That might be true in the Midwest where they don't have fences and they all got riding lawnmowers.
yep.
Secretly, I'd like to have a riding lawnmower just for the fun of it.
Well,
But
your yard is probably big enough for one, so
yeah, not
I
quite.
guess.
So when I lived in Dixon, so up near Davis,
Uh-huh.
right on the edge of like the town basically ended and farms started. So there were
Yep.
some bigger lots, and the church that we were at had this huge grass lawn, and the men were all lined up for to volunteer for lawnmower duty because they all wanted to drive that riding lawnmower around the church grounds. It was,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, boys will be boys.
Yes,
I
exactly.
digress. So, but the no, you break it up and you can create different spaces, and
Yeah,
some are obvious, right? You can have some play activities, whether for kids or adults, like a trampoline or a bocce court. And then you have perhaps a part of the yard where you have gardening, and that might be a little less visible from the house because the
yeah,
garden doesn't always look good, right? You've got different seasons there that things might be in full bloom and you love all the greenery in the summer, but in the off time of the year, it's actually quite of an eyesore. So having that kind of separated out, obviously there's outbuildings of all sorts of different things that can add to the aesthetics, whether that is a playhouse or a storage shed, if it is done well, to an ADU. And then of course seating areas or grassy areas.
and don't forget the outdoor kitchen, which is becoming more and more common.
Yes, the outdoor kitchen and
It's not
the
enough just to have a barbecue, a grill out there.
no, right,
You need kitchen, the
yeah,
refrigerator, the ice maker, the cooktop. I mean, and a cover for it.
yeah.
We've seen some spectacular kitchens out there.
And outdoor TVs and just
Yeah,
the ability to hang out in the summer in the evenings.
yeah,
It's rather than trying to run your air conditioner, just sitting outside and enjoying the weather. So providing shade, and of course we haven't even talked about pools and hot tubs. We probably should leave that for a whole podcast on its own. Uh, I have thoughts, but that's a whole other story.
well, I know, I have a pool and I don't use it very often. It needs to be resurfaced, but it breaks up the green of my yard and it reflects different times of years. There's a reflection in the pool that just makes the yard absolutely gorgeous, whether it's the pink crepe myrtles in the summertime that are reflecting off the pool, or the leaves in the fall when they start to turn orange and gold and beautiful colors like that. It's like a giant pond, an expensive one to maintain. Don't get me wrong, but it just is so pretty in the yard in the way it creates a contrast against all the green.
It's yeah, it definitely is one of those things that the aesthetics of the pool can make a big difference in how a yard feels.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Yeah. So do you have are there some flowers or plants or trees that you like when you're looking at a house? Not necessarily from a sales standpoint, but just for your own personal.
Mhm. I'm a big fan of hydrangeas, and it's a little too warm in California to get the big banks of hydrangeas like you do in Cape Cod in the summertime. You'll see pictures of those houses, the white houses with the wraparound porch,
Yep.
with huge hydrangea plants that come up almost to the railing on the porch fence. And if I could have that in California, I would have that. I just love the way it looks.
Yeah.
The heat, hydrangeas do not like the heat we get in the summer. 100 degrees for day after day after day does not do well.
Yep.
Every so often I see one that's a good size, maybe a 6 foot bush
Yep.
hydrangeas, and I just wonder, how they got it to survive.
Yeah.
But that would be my thing. How about you?
I mean, a couple filtered sun plants like azaleas or
Yeah.
rhododendrons. I just they have a little kind of delicateness to their blooms that are just something yeah, and enough greenery. Like I don't really like rose bushes because I kind of feel like the green part of a rose bush is not. It's all. I mean, the thorny. I just kind of don't like it. But
Yeah, it's not that pretty, but the blooms
yeah, and
and the
for the
way it can make your
azalea.
garden smell.
Yeah, and the azalea, is green year round. Um, but yeah, that doesn't tolerate the direct sun very well. Um,
And it's I have one big azalea in my backyard and it blooms for about 3 weeks and it's just stunning.
yeah.
But then it's just green the rest of the year and that's fine too. But
Um,
you know what I like is when the citrus starts to bloom in the
mhm.
spring. You know, you've picked all the fruit in December when it starts to get ripe, and then you have a little bit of time before the citrus starts to bloom, and how it can make the yard or even a whole neighborhood just smell really great. Especially the Meyer lemon, as you know, one of my favorites. I rescue them from homes all the time.
At one point, Sherry had like four different lemon trees in large pots in her backyard because yes, they were like being thrown out of one summer. It seemed like they were every listing was being seller was getting rid of this potted lemon, and she's like, "I'll take it." Lemons are one of those weird things because you can have the full life cycle on the tree at any given time, from bloom to an overripe lemon
Yep,
and everything
yep.
in between. And so there's not like one season. It's always producing.
When I have relatives visit from outside of the state, they're always amazed if you drive down the street and it's like there's a 30-foot grapefruit tree covered in grapefruit. It's just sitting there. Nobody's because how much grapefruit can you eat?
I know.
And
Yeah.
some of these trees, they grow taller than the house. I've got a couple around the corner from me. One house has a grapefruit tree in it, and I think it's an orange. I'm not sure what kind of an orange tree, but they're just enormous, and the fruit just sits there because you can eat a few oranges and a few grapefruit, but after that, what do you do with all of it?
Yeah.
It looks pretty.
My dad always loved persimmon trees.
Oh, they're one of my favorites.
When
I
you
did.
got to that point where the not the cooking ones, but the ones that you can eat,
Yeah,
they were fully ripe and the leaves had started to fall off the tree. And he goes, it just looks like a Christmas tree with all those
yeah.
ornaments on it, just sweet like sweet candy when they were that ripe if the squirrels hadn't gotten them.
Uh, I did not know that about your dad. I love persimmon trees.
Yeah.
I used to know where all of the big ones in Walnut Creek were, so I could go look at them in the fall after the
Yeah.
leaves drop and they're just covered with fruit.
Yeah.
Pretty.
We when we moved into our house, we had a very aged persimmon tree that it was a little bit of a weed and wasn't really producing much fruit, but my dad was furious with us when we cut it down.
Oh boy, I
We
bet.
also had a plum tree that was like a tired old stump, but still had a few shoots off of it. Like they had just somebody else had done a really nice job of planting fruit trees around this yard, but they had just reached maturity and were no longer productive, and so we had to cut
Yeah.
them out. Well, I was just mentioning a moment ago about getting the fruit before the squirrels do. Did I tell you that I used that trap that Jonathan had recommended to catch a gopher in my yard?
No,
Yeah,
tell me, you went and
so
bought
I
your own, huh?
yeah, so I've been trying to I've had on and off battles with the gopher or mole or whatever. I don't even know how to identify which animal is which, to be honest. But it's been a losing battle. Like so when we first moved in, I first redid the lawn in the backyard. I caught a couple of them as this is like probably 15 years ago. I'm feeling pretty
Like
good
with a
about
trap?
yeah, with a trap. Yeah. I was feeling
Yeah.
pretty good about myself. It was one that kind of pinched. Um and then I don't know, they Darwin outsmarted me and I stopped catching them and my kids got older and weren't playing in the backyard, so I wasn't as worried about it. But it's just totally destroying my lawn. Just
Yeah.
mounds of dirt that I gotta plow down and then try and figure out how to fill holes in. And it's all uneven. You're gonna break an ankle. Anyone comes and walks on my grass, you're gonna have to sign a disclaimer in case you break an ankle. So, but we have a client who we're one of the listings we're getting ready, and he has this trap that he swears by, and he says that he was able to within like a half hour of discovering new mounds, he could put a trap in and catch one. And I'm like, where did you get that? Like I was very enamored by it. And he goes, just at Ace Hardware, it's like the Gopher Hawk or something like that.
It
And
just looked like a couple pieces of pipe. I wasn't really sure how it worked.
yeah, it's yes, it's like a pipe, and it's got a spring-loaded trap that you stick it down into so you find where the tunnel is without digging it up. You kind of see where there's some mounds that are come up
Uh-huh.
and find it in between, and you push it down in, and as the gophers going along the tunnel, they get caught up in this trap. And I didn't. So our client said he caught it every time he catches it, like within a half hour. Mine, it had to wait overnight. But I got it over the first night. It was this huge gopher. I'd never seen a gopher this big before. Probably because he's been living there for 15 years. I mean, like just eating everything. So
Yeah, exactly.
I won't go into the details any further than that, but I was very excited. I had started to get a little bit like Bill Murray and Caddyshack. Fortunately, this was a little less destructive than the Semtex that Bill Murray used to blow up the whole golf course.
Oh my gosh. Well, if there's one, there's many. So I suspect there are more trapped gophers in your future.
Yeah, maybe. You're not really a big rodent fan, are you,
I
Sherry?
am not even remotely a rodent fan. Yes, if I talk about them, I have nightmares about them. So
Oh, let's keep moving on. Let's change
la
subjects.
la la la
Well,
la
no, no,
la
nothing to
la
see
la.
here. Sorry, I should have told a different story.
No, I think it's a good story because I mean, for people who want to deal with, critters in their yard, you've given them some valuable information. What can I
Yes. The name of it will be in the show notes. Sally texts me, I'll tell you what it is. All right. Um, I think that that's about it for right now. One of those things about gardening is you don't have to move out to fix your yard up. And the good news is you can enjoy it while you're still living there. So if you've got questions about
say?
things that might make a difference for sale, we'd be happy to give you recommendations. But really, if you're going to enjoy it, it probably makes sense for selling it too. And go ahead and make your house a home and do take care of the things you want to take care of for yourself, and it'll pay off in the end.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other final thoughts?
No, well, I guess I do have one in, light of all the fires that have been going on down in LA, and we have our own fires at times. One of my favorite things is to just spread, uh, you know, black bark in a front yard, sometimes in a backyard. It makes this beautiful contrast with the rest of the house and looks great in pictures. And I'm wondering if it's something that's going to go out of use because of potential fire. I mean, that stuff burns.
It's very interesting. So two comments about that. One, there's a local fire district that really is doing an excellent job and has been for several years about helping homeowners improve their fire safety, the Moraga Arinda Fire District. And one of the things that they do, you're required to rake your wood chips back from the house, I think like 2 feet.
Ah, okay.
Because what happens is that the vents around the bottom of your foundation, which are designed to allow air to flow underneath to take moisture out,
Hmm.
well, when the wind is howling and blowing through those, it'll blow wood chips up against that vent and catch them on fire, and it'll blow
Oh,
flaming embers underneath your house. That's how houses are catching fire. So that's the reason why they're recommending Rickenback. So you might be right. And then the other thing you probably have seen a couple times on the news about that one house that survived in Pacific Palisades, where everything else in the neighborhood it had been recently designed or modern designed about some efficiencies, and it had rock as its ground cover and not wood.
oh, interesting.
And I wonder whether that played a role in it that wasn't catching the wood chips on fire and then blowing it up against the house.
That could be it. It also makes me wonder if there needs to be some sort of automatic louver on a vent. I mean, you have to have ventilation under a house, but if you've got a fire heading your way, is there some way to close off those vents so you don't get the embers sucked into the bottom of the house and create a fire situation?
Yeah, you know what? We should have somebody from MOFD Moraga Orinda Fire District come on and tell us about that because they've been really good. The whole county, Contra Costa County, has a service similar that they're ramping up for all residents. But
Yeah.
if you've been paying attention on the news, La Miranda, Lafayette, Orinda, Moraga has been in the news about a place where we could have something similar to Pacific Palisades, and so it's a
Yeah.
pay attention. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
If you need to get your yard ready for looking its best for sale, give us a call.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. All right, everybody. If you like this episode, be sure to like and subscribe. Recommend us to your friends. We'd be happy to share all the things we know about real estate with you. All right. We'll see you all next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.